Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the second of three conversations on the search for democracy in Ethiopia. I learned so much from last week's discussion, and I'm keen to learn more from you and your colleagues tonight. My name is Mark Campbell. I'm a director of Democracy House, and because my initials are MC, I will be your MC tonight. I'd like you to know that while I've got the easy job of introducing this evening's event, other Democracy House directors are working hard behind the scenes to bring this important series to you, and I'd like to acknowledge them. Democracy House is a non-partisan and multi-partisan grassroots movement dedicated to restoring respectful engagement as the foundation of thriving democratic systems. Our guiding values are trust and respect, inclusion and diversity, honesty and transparency, openness and engagement. We focus on activities, events, education, and advocacy. The Democracy House was conceived in Toronto, the world's first 50-50 city. That means that when you meet someone here, chances are 50-50, well, they will not even have been born in Canada. The beautiful thing about living here is that your friends, neighbors, people you meet daily can be from just about anywhere in the world, and I love that. A year ago, on Canada Day, I went for a walk in High Park with some neighbors. I met Gizan Demisi, who told us that on Canada Day 5 years ago, he became a Canadian citizen. We could see from his smiling eyes, and that beaming smile behind his mask showed how happy and thankful he was. Since then, I've learned more about Gizan. He graduated from the Addis Ababa University and New Generation University College in Global Studies, International Relations, and Literature. In Ethiopia, he worked at various print and broadcast media outlets and went on to establish 3 radio shows on literature and a TV show on urbanization. These were shut down by the Ethiopian government, and the result, exile in Canada. Toronto is now fortunate to have Gizan and his small family living amongst us. Gizan remains highly engaged with the Ethiopian diaspora in North America through his New Perspectives journal and Addisቅኝት radio programs focused on human rights. Having been engaged in a series of Democracy House conversations in February, Gizan asked if we might help organize a similar conversation series about democracy in Ethiopia, which is to hold elections this year. And here we are this evening to discuss ethnic federalism in Ethiopia. How do you like it so far? Gizan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mark, for your generous introduction. Good evening, our guests, and welcome to our conversation tonight. As Mark earlier mentioned, today's issue is ethnic federalism in Ethiopia, and how do you like it so far? In this conversation, you will explore the concepts of ethnic federalism and other forms of democracy, like liberal democracy in the context of Ethiopia, by considering ideas such as liberalism as a primary of individual rights accruing to all equally, democracy as the voice of people in their own governance, liberal democracy where the people consent to the rules who are constrained to respect individual rights, ethnic federalism where political legitimacy and or representation of ethnic groups is codified in the law. As you know, today's keynote speaker is the great human rights activist and defender, Obang Metho. Obang Metho would speak about ethnic federalism. I would like to thank all the board members and volunteers at Democracy House beforehand. As we all know, the reason for this conversation is the upcoming Ethiopian election, which is scheduled to vote in the national elections in June 14. The election is happening amid both a war in the north province of Tigray and ethnic and religious massacre in many parts of the country, the diplomatic pressure from USA and the European Union, and of course the pandemic. Tonight's conversation is focused on one of the main challenges in the contemporary Ethiopian political history. After the end of Cold War, Mallas Zenawi and his guerrilla group took power and adopted ethnic federalism with the aim of establishing the equality of all ethnic groups in Ethiopia by denying individual rights. Ethnic federalism system have been created in attempt to accommodate ethnic tensions within a state, but on the contrary, after 3 decades living under this system, Ethiopians are on the verge of disintegration. civil war and genocide threats are escalating. Minority groups in the ethnically divided regions are exposed for massacre and ethnic cleansing. According to the report from Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and other international human rights organizations, why all this happening during the ethnic federal system that is still legal according to the Ethiopian constitution? Today, we will examine questions related to this issue with our keynote speaker, Obang Metho. Is ethnic federalism just another name for the systemic inequalities that remain in Ethiopia? If some people don't have a voice at the table, is it a democracy at all? Is ethnic federalism necessary to give voice to people where the person is mute? What contributes to the conditions of animosity versus the conditions of compromise? With this, I would like to introduce you to tonight's keynote speaker, Mr. Obang Metho. Mr. Obang Metho is the founder and executive director of Solidarity Movement for New Ethiopia. Mr. Obang Metho is the founder and he is an international, non-violent and non-partisan social justice movement of diverse Ethiopians committed to bring freedom, justice, and respect for human rights, equality, civility, reconciliation, and good governance to Ethiopia. Mr. Metho is a human rights activist who is tirelessly advocates for human rights, justice, freedom, and environment, enhanced accountability in politics and peace in Africa for over 18 years. He is a courageous defender of fundamental respects for human life and is committed to work for the reconciliation, forgiveness, and healing of affected peoples in order to create a positive future. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Obang Metho to the stage. The floor is yours, Obang. You are mute, I think.
Can you hear me now, everybody?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Campbell, and thank you also, Designs. Almost thanks to everybody in this room. I really appreciate it. And so I am actually in Ethiopia, and it's now about almost past 2 a.m. in here. And so, yes, I think that I would like to first say that, thanks to the Democracy House, conversation. I think this is very, very important. In the world we live in today, we are so connected, not by our ethnicities or language or culture or religions. We are actually connected by our environment. And I think this is one thing that, and then to have that, the discussion is a very important. Conversation is, the foundation, the backbone of any living society. So this topic in Ethiopia about, ethnic federalism, how do you like it so far? The title, when I read that, I was laughing. I said, how do you like it so far? It is not very good, especially in Ethiopia. And it's not very good, not because by me, even people who have come up with this idea, it's not good for them. It did not work. As I said, we live in the 21st century. And we are, whether we like it or not, we are so interconnected by technology, by so many things. And if there's any other thing that can really, we all can know in the last 2 years, in the last 1 year, since the COVID campaign, one thing COVID did to us is that we are all connected. What we ever have, really, we didn't really have anything much more that difference at us. When we talk, people say they go back, social distance. Stay away from streets, stay away from home. Those who live in the mansion went to the mansion. Those who live in the hut went to the hut. So whether you live in a place where there's street or where you live where there's no street. So we are all connected together. So when we come to talk about this ethnic federalism, it is a system which is anti-civilization, anti-humanity, anti-harmony, anti-peace, anti-living together. Let me say why. Before, when Mr. Campbell was talking about design, he met him, and then when he met him, he didn't meet a man of ethnicity. He met a human being, just like him. The skin color may be different, but their humanity connected them as one. And the conversation started there on the park. And that conversation now is in here, in the Zoom. And this conversation now is in the world. That democracy conversation we're talking about, it is how we as a human being can live together. And to living together, we have to have a system that's suitable to everybody. So the ethnic federalism in Ethiopia, it was set up not for harmony. The reason why I say it's not for harmony, because it divided peoples by group rights. You cannot call a group unless you start with the singles. Individual right, we all in this room right now, we are credited equally as a human beings, not as ethnic groups. We are all created equal. And with that in mind, my individual right, if you would respect it, the individual right of my neighbors. So, but what we have in Ethiopia is the backward. If something cannot work in the 19th, let alone in the 21st century. So this system was a group of peoples who really thought that they were fighting to bring something better to Ethiopia. But actually what they brought is the worst things. Let me tell you why. In Ethiopia today, all of you in this room, if you live in Ethiopia, you will not be able to vote in wherever you are unless you are belonging to that ethnic group. You cannot vote for, you cannot be voted for office, or you cannot vote. The regions has been made by demarked by the ethnicity. For example, the Tigray regions, the Amhara regions, the Oromo region, the Somali region, the Afar region, those I'm calling Oromo is an ethnic group, Afar is an ethnic group, Amhara is an ethnic group, Tigray is an ethnic group. So people were being divided by ethnicity. And those who live in those regions, pretty much that their right is not equal to those of that ethnicity who live in that area. And it went to the point that even in some part of the countries, like for example, in Deradua, there's one thing they call it 40-40-20. So in there, and I wanted to give one example why I say that, for example, there's an ethnic groups who live in Afar, there's many of them, or who live in Deradua, for example. In Deradua, if you are someone of Somalian, you are 40% to be voted in office, to be elected and voted, and even to get a job in the office. And then if you are an Oromo, you are 40%. And if you are in, at the groups, you have 20%. In Harar, you have 50% if you are an Harare, and you have 50% if you are an Oromo. If you are in Ethiopia, we have almost 86 different ethnic groups. So this system made it that individuals or the minority group have no voice. It's not counted. It doesn't matter. They are not valued. So this system really was set up specifically to advance the interest of the few, for the few to thrive, for the majority to struggle to survive. And then how it's been in the last 27 years or 30 years, not been that good. Ethiopia is being known as a country, the creation of humanity, and a country that people know the 3,000 years. In the last 3,000 years, by intermarriage, living together, that they continue to sustain the countries. But when this system come of ethnic federalism, it say that what we had in Ethiopia before was wrong. And the way to replace it is that, what they call it, a group right. Unless you are in a group, you have no right. So, and now it gets to the point that the farmers harvest what they have planted. What was planted in Ethiopia 30 years ago, now it has reached to the point of harvesting. The harvesting of it is the reason why you're seeing Ethiopian being targeted based on their ethnicity. In particular, we're hearing recently, Amara has been specifically targeted by being an Amara and saying that you are a newcomer. You come from somewhere else. You are settlers. Go back to where you come from, or go back to your regions. There's a violence in all over part of the country. Because of the ingredients that which was used was not about the army. Gizang can live in Toronto and not a single day he will be afraid that someone will come and knock the door and kill him because of his ethnicity, or because he's an Ethiopian, or because he's a black man, or because he's in Africa, period. He will not. I left and I live in Saskatchewan, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, when I was at the age of 16 to 17. In Saskatchewan, when I was living there, I was one of the very few black people. And I remember some of my friends used to call their mom and say, Mom, we had a black guy in the school. And then one time my mom said that, there's my friend that in high school said that, I told him, can I come to your home tomorrow? And he said that, yes, you can come. But he called his mom and say, Mom, we have this kid that he wanted to come home. And the mom said, what's the problem? He can come. He said, but the guy is not from here. And the mom says, so what's the problem? Mom, the guy is black. Okay, so what? Yeah, but he's black, but it's not the kind of black we've seen here. He's a really black guy. But in that environment, I was accepted it in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, as a human being, not as a black man, or not as my ethnicity, or not as an Ethiopian or an African. But that's not the case. I have the privilege to live abroad, but in my home country, that's not the case. And that's why I say that, how do you like it so far? It is not. It did not work well. Design talk about there's a war right now, or the fighting in the north, in the Tigray region. The group who have created this system, they thought that they can survive, while the other people would struggle to, the other people would remain, but it didn't work. So the system which was set, the constitution of the countries, it did not say that we, the people of Ethiopia. It said that nation, nationality, people group. It's only in Ethiopia that you have the description of a citizen tree. We, the nation, nationality, people group. The people has been put at the last. The regional has been named after the ethnicity. In Canada, you have Saskatchewan, Alberta, Ontario. All of these, all these place is based by geography. Anyone can come and live, but it's not the case. So this system went and on for the 7 years. And it's still that system we are using it today. And it's now the source why you are seeing that people are being killed based on their ethnicity. People are being, displaced based on their ethnicity. Like, for example, people are being told, go back, where do you come from? So this system, it did not work. Why? As I say, that it was set up based on deception. There's no transparency, there's no accountability. These people used it in thinking that it's for us to advance, we have to come up to a system that will work for us. But that system did not work for them. It did not work for Ethiopia. It did not work for Africa. It did not work for the whole humanity. At the end, those countries where the ethnicity has been advanced, we see in Yugoslavia an example. We know Rwanda was an example. And ethnicity is not the way to live. And so, coming back to my point in 5 minutes, I will be, trying to, with all of these that Gazani asked earlier, we talk about it. For sure, from what I see, this system of ethnic-federalism, it created a system of lack of cooperation. You cannot cooperate with others. And it also that lack of caring about others. It created a corruption where our groups much more better than others. It also lacked justice, the court of law. And it actually made people to become more poor because, in other words, it's lack of private property. Resource has been only to those groups who are leading in charge. They can grab the land and give it to their own. The ethnicity would, the person of that ethnicity in power would get the loan, will get the land, will get access to other things. So almost that is unfair for others. It denies opportunity to others, including those who are of minority groups or other groups. So it becomes a system only opportunists can thrive while the whole society cannot survive. So in a way that it also that created a breeding ground for a human rights abuse. And this is the case that we are working on in Ethiopia. Coming to the conclusion, how do we solve this? And how do we solve this? I see now myself living in Canada, living in Saskatchewan, in Gambela, in almost 17 years ago, an annual group called ANUAK, spelling ANUAK, and ANUAK, an ethnic groups, where my family come from. They are all even less than 1% of the Ethiopian population. In 2003, they were targeted and killed based on their ethnicity. By then, I play a role to say that I will never want this to happen again. So what I realized that the problem of Ethiopia is systematic. And the way to approach it was, a critical thinking, changing the talking. And that was why we created an organization where, if you look at it, when I was introduced, the Solidarity Movement for New Ethiopia, it's not a new country. It's not a new flag. It's a new thinking where we value the humanity of everyone, where my life depends on my neighbors, not on my ethnicity. And then where we value, not only once we value the human being, we have the responsibility to protect that individuals. So the principle is humanity before ethnicity. No one is free until we are all free. And this is the idea that we thought that, and then the other thing which we talk is talking to each other, not about each other. When we talk to each other, I can defend myself, but when we talk about each other, I'm not there. And you can say whatever, that's not about me. So coming to conclusion, what can we do about it? Ethiopia at the great risk right now as we speak. You may have heard it yesterday or a few days ago, US want to put the visa restriction, there's a sanction talking on and all of these things. These ideas, the Western, even American, they didn't really take it very critically. Yes, there's a problem in the Tigray regions, but what it is a systematic that cannot be solved only by sanction. The problem is much more deeper than that. So the problem of Ethiopia is not, we cannot leave it to Ethiopian alone. That's why I really like this democracy house for this kind of conversation. Tomorrow, whether we like it or not, the problem of Ethiopia will come to our living room on our television stage. Before it gets to that, I don't want us to come up and say that we did not know this. And not to say we did not know. At one point, we say that we did not know what happened in Rwanda. What happened in Rwanda? What happened in Kosovo? What happened in Somalia? We did not. And the discussion is to start now. And so I come to you guys and wanted to say that this discussion is very important. And this system we have in Ethiopia, it is anti-humanity, anti-unity, anti-civilization, anti-peace, and it's actually worse than apartheid in South Africa. Because it makes people less than who they are. It narrow us and put us down to the point of really failing the responsibility. And so to me, the solution is rely on Ethiopia. This problem is created by Ethiopian, but it's Ethiopian who will solve it. But we also need other people to stand with it. And I want to end it with this. Being a human being, carry a debt. We all owe a debt to creator that who created us as a human being. To be a human, that you must need another person. An animal can be born and will go and eat and survive by themselves. A human being will never survive without other human beings, That's why it takes 18 years in Canada and the US and the West to call someone a self-reliance, independent. So we need each other. The problem in Ethiopia may be 3,000, 4,000 miles away from Toronto, but by our humanity, it's not far away, not that much far. So now by saying that which of us owe a debt, to this world that we live in, to this life that we have, each one of us have a responsibility to talk to each other, not about each other, to correct what is, what's wrong and make it what's right. So ethnicity, did it work in Ethiopia? How do you like it so far? It was not good, it was not good. If it's not good, it's not going to be good, because if being organized by ethnicity Group right was right. Ethiopia would have never been the only one. The reason why we have so many Ethiopians in Canada all over the world, not because they are from there originally, not because their ethnicity is there. They were there and accepted as an individual first, not as an Ethiopian, as a human being first, and then, a citizen of that country. So we have, coming back to what Mark said earlier, you guys create this platform for this kind of dialogue. Many people don't know. And I just want to really to say that the kind of privilege I had in Saskatchewan, it will not happen in my own country where I live in, where I was originally from, and now the problem. But I cannot live. Now, whether I like it, is the problem of Saskatchewan, the problem of Canada as well. So I want to end it in saying with you guys, thank you for inviting me in this kind of discussion. Ethiopia is a critical, right now, but that problem cannot be left to Ethiopia. It is the problem of all of us, humanity. And I think that the solution to Ethiopia is to create a conducive environment, consensus, where we value the humanity of everybody who lives there, knowing that by being a human being, I have responsibility, not only for my tribe, but for my fellow neighbors. Ethiopian has this saying, the closest neighbors, your neighbors closer to you than a faraway family members. That is something that we have forgotten. Ethiopian have this, የቅርብ ዘመድ ጎረቤት ከሩቅ ዘመድ ይቻላል. In a way, the closest person to me, my neighbors, that meaning that my neighbor could be anybody. He's much more closer to me than my brother who lives 4,000 miles away from me. So this system is wrong, but it can be fixed. It's not too late. We have to go back to valuing the humanity of everyone, not because of that person belongs to our ethnicity. So the way to where to start this democracy house. You guys have done that, your work, and let's continue to do this. At the end of the day, we are into this world for a short period of time. What have we done when we leave from here? So until then, we have a responsibility. By being a human being, we owe a debt, and we have to pay our debt. Thank you for inviting me. So if there's any question that I will be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Obang, for your very touchy and insightful presentation. I have some questions for you. You have been in Ethiopia for the last 3 years, where after the change happened, after TPLF kicked off from the central government. And what is like your experience about the ethnic system? Do you see any change after you go back to Ethiopia? Because the diaspora community wants to know first-hand information from your experience. And the other thing is, you are following a non-violence method for your struggle. But do you think your way works in today's Ethiopia, where all the regions are highly armed and everybody is depending on violence? How do you compromise this?
Well, thank you. Yes, definitely that, I say that I was one of those people that were living outside, living in Saskatchewan, and after that I moved to Ottawa. So 3 years ago when the change came to Ethiopia, I thought that this would be the beginning of a real change. Yes, the beginning was very good. Then, all of us in the diaspora in Ethiopia were excited, not only Ethiopian, even the Western. Actually, that's why they awarded the Nobel Peace Prize to the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. Back then, many people who thought this would be the end and this would be the beginning of a new chapter. So from that on, I came, and when I came here, I came as a team. There's, our organization, we came as 16 of us. And these 16 from different ethnic groups, different religions. And the idea was, we went to Gambela. And when we went to Gambela, our team was called in a mission in Ethiopia. When we went to Gambela, the goal was to tell the people of Gambela that we need to reconcile. We need to heal the wound. So many tears has been shed. So much blood has been shed. So many mothers been left, with no children. So many kids have been left fatherless in Ethiopia. So I thought that the problem of this country can be solved by reconciliation. So we went to Gambela. From Gambela, then I went to more than 16 universities, talking to the Ethiopian young people. And what I was telling them, what I said earlier, that, look, we come to this world when we were born, we have no language, no religions, no ethnicities. From the day that I was born, has I been mixed with another darker kid like me, I could end up being, say someone who look bald head like me, and from Congo, from Senegal, from Sudan, from other places. So I was trying to tell these young people the critical thing that what we need is we are all created, before ethnicity, before a language, before religions. It was very good an idea. As you can see, that one thing that from then even I tried to talk to the government, ask the government people, what Ethiopia needs is constitutional reform and then institutional reform, a meaningful reform. That unless you change that. And I made it very clear at that time to the government people whom I met. A country is like a vehicle. A car, if you change the drivers and the brake is not working, doesn't matter if you're driving with Jesus Christ or Nabi Muhammad or Muhammad Magandhi or Mandela or Pope, it will end up in a ditch if the brake is not right. So the institution in Ethiopia, the constitution has to be reformed. The constitution in terms of a vehicle, I say it could be the tire, it could be the engine, it could be the windshield, it could be there's many things on it. But the constitution reform was untouched. Institutional reform was untouched. And it went on and then it built on to the point that where the TPLF who brought this system did not even want to compromise. It is our way or no way. And they went and attention got to the point of 3 years in the government trying to say they let changes. They didn't want to change. And then it come in and last year when it was, when the COVID came and the government extended, the election postponed it for another, they went and I didn't have that election. And that's why I say that the system was done in Ethiopia. It's like a prenup, marriage. The TPLF made it even an Ethiopian constitution say that Article 39, and if whenever we don't want Ethiopian by then, we can be able to succeed and become a country. And then when they lost the power in Addis, most of them went and joined and set up in their own regions, integrated regions, some of the leaders here. And then from there, then the government and them had this dialogue, but really a more effective work was not done. Eventually what happened, they had an election by themselves, won the rest of the country. Like having, or like Ontario have an election in Canada, and the rest of the Canada is not good. And eventually it get to the point that where, the government changed the money currency. And then that become really scary for them. They didn't, because the money they have now, they will not use that money anymore. That created more of a problem. And what happened then, they attacked the government, the defense force, which is based on the north. And then that created the war that we have today. So what I mean was, it's just like a prenup agreement kind of thing that we can lead Ethiopia whenever we want to. And if we are not in charge, we can go lead Ethiopia. And so they went to the point of now, the government, the war went on, and then with them, and then some of the leaders were arrested, some of them disappeared. Human rights abuse took place in there. And that's why I say that system was not done for harmony, for peace. And this one thing that, which is I also try to correct people. I keep saying that, like in there is a genocide going on, against all the Tigray. The Tigray and Ethiopia. They are us, we are them. And there are Tigray who are living in the Gambela region in southwest Ethiopia, where I come from. No one is touching them. There's a Tigrayan who living in Amara and in other places. So this idea, even sometimes the Western seem to take the narrative for the last 27 years. The system in place by them, the West, including the US, they were fighting with the system, with the government in place, this ethnic-federalism by what they call war on terror. Mallas was actually, the darling of the West. He had committed so many atrocities, but nothing was happening. So, but all of a sudden now with this abuse going on in Ethiopia, we kind of sweep that carpet. There's many people who are being targeted. To me, one of the biggest threats in Ethiopia is the ethnic-based killing going on, especially in Oromia region and Benishangul regions. And you see that, the US and the West are not talking about this. This is the biggest threat. You mentioned about so many army, because for example, every tribe in every regions, they're training so many soldiers. And when there's a national defense force, So to answer your question, did anything change? Absolutely, to me, there was some good change at the beginning, but now things are not going that well. And that's why I said you see a massive more death of people today, than almost 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and ethnic-based violence. And then Ethiopian Human Rights Commission keep reporting and again. Even some of the politicians even failed to come out and condemn it and then show that what the problem is. And so that's what I keep telling the Ethiopian, we cannot get used to the death. It is an animal that when another animal killed, they run away. A human being cannot. That's why there's justice. So since the change come, I was really hoping that the constitution will change, things will get better. Then the country will move to a right direction. But now it gets to the point that where the country is becoming more vulnerable than the last 3,000 history of the country. You've seen Egypt and Sudan beating at the drum of war, and then you see the ethnicity, people are not in together. You see the ethnicity group, having this, what they call militia to train them. And then you have the problem now in the north. So to me, as answering your question, change is not that, when even now we're talking about election. For example, in election, there's some regions, election is not casting the ballot. Have a pre-conscious mind of thinking who to vote. There's some part of the region in Ethiopia now where an opposition group or some group cannot go and vote and campaign because they will be targeted. There's some part of the country that where thousands of people were being displaced. They cannot do and vote it. So the environment that is not really conducive to a peace or harmony and leading together. So that and people have to go back. Ethiopian has to start talking to each other. But this idea of pretending, even people within the top government pretending that the problem doesn't exist. You can sweep the carpet, you can sweep the garbage and the carpet. Sooner or later you will smell it. Sooner or later you will deal with it. So you cannot sweep these kind of issues under the carpet. It's a matter of time will come back to you, to bite you. So how do you see the problem? The problem is getting worse than better, but also that the Ethiopian themselves, the Ethiopian who live abroad, Ethiopian who are living in the country, are not seeing a common vision. Right now, people have tribal visions, but there's no common vision. There are people even who are not learning from what happened yesterday. The TPLF has brought this system and they try it. How do you like it? So far for them was not good. And there are some people who forget that tomorrow they will be asked, how do you like it so far? So this idea of recycling, it is my turn to eat. It's my tribe turn to eat. It may be your turn for a while, but don't forget that when you are on a lineup and there's someone in front of you, don't forget that there will be someone behind. If it is today my turn, I should never forget there will be somebody else turn behind tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Obang.